Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
This is Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, episode number 291.
Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, Bruce Hutchin, and I'm really happy to have part two of Shawn Greathouse. Shawn's been so successful taking the Colorado Big 8. He's taken some monster whitetails, and he's also been to Asia and took a Asiatic water buffalo. So stay tuned. He's going to wrap up the show telling you secrets and lessons learned. Hey, listeners, don't forget to text 33444 Food Plot for your free Food Plot ebook. So, Shawn, welcome to part two of your show.
Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate it.
So let's get right into the Colorado Big 8 species with bow and arrow and just highlight, the animals you've taken with shorts and short stories. And then let's talk about, I believe, your most recent harvest was a mountain goat someplace in the San Juans. Is that correct?
That is correct. So the Colorado Big 8, there's 10 different big game animals that I think we talked about a little bit earlier in Colorado, and there's Rocky Mountain sheep, Rocky Mountain desert bighorn sheep, Rocky Mountain sheep, mountain goats. There's whitetail deer, mule deer, elk, antelope, black bear, mountain lion, and there's probably a couple of moose, Cyrus moose, that make up the 10. And essentially, once you complete 8 of the 10 with a bow, there's kind of a little awards at the banquet, and it's just kind of an achievement, which some guys don't really set out to do, but they'll get 5 or 6, and then hey, I'm pretty close, and then they start, putting in for licenses for the others, and end up, hopefully someday, with that achievement. And the 2 that I don't have is the Cyrus moose and the desert bighorn. And the desert bighorn, there's only, I think, 9 tags or something like that in the whole state, and there's no preference point system for them. So every year you've got as good odds as the next guy, except for there's 6,000 of you putting in for those 9 licenses. So odds of drawing that tag are slim to none. The Cyrus moose, I've been putting in for that since before they started the weighted point preference point system in Colorado. And I just, for whatever reason, I can't seem to draw a Cyrus moose tag. But I have been fortunate enough to hunt and take the other 8 species. And, I just got back from a mountain goat hunt in early October down in the San Juan range, kind of between Durango and Silverton. And that was a fun hunt. We got to ride the narrow gauge railroad in, where we jumped off the train. Essentially, they stop at a trailhead, and we were able to hike up towards some of the 14ers and hunt mountain goats, and spent 10 days on that hunt, and was able to connect with a nice billy with a nice coat. And so that was my goal. I wanted a mature billy with a nice winter coat, because the mountain goat I'd killed 18 years previously was a nanny with a short summer coat. So, but that was a lot of fun. So that's kind of what the Big 8 is and what it's all about. But what's really kind of cool about the Big 8 is not so much the animals themselves, but the different environments and the different tactics and ways of hunting these animals. You're going to hunt antelope maybe differently than you would a Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep, and some of those things. So that's been it's more the journey the hunt as opposed to the actually killing the animal. It's seeing all the different environments, and that's what makes it fun for me.
Now, let's tell the people, out east and other parts of the country where they don't have the number of different species. So just walking through and say, okay, 10 years ago I took an elk and, it took me 5 days or whatever, and just give a short, synopsis of each of the hunts.
Right. So, boy, it's hard to, you put me on the spot here. It's hard to remember all of them just offhand like that. I guess that's, but basically it really varies. Like a mule deer hunt is something that I didn't start out going for the big 8. It just kind of played out, and when I realized I was close, I might not normally have hunted a mountain lion. Let's just say, that wasn't always on my things I wanted to do, but when I found out I was close and I had an opportunity kind of fall my way, I was able to go on a mountain lion hunt, and the mountain lion hunt, surprisingly, was one of the harder hunts that I had been on. But the deer, that those can take a day, they could take a week, they could take a season. It just kind of worked out as I was growing up and learning about bow hunting, and every time I go out, I'd learn something new. And the first year I hunted, I killed a nice bull elk with my bow. Even though I hunted antelope and deer and everything else, the only thing I harvested was an elk. The next year, the only thing I harvested was an antelope. So it just kind of progressed, and little by little, I found myself getting closer to that achievement, and had a friend who had some hounds that asked me if I was interested in going on a lion hunt, and it took 12 outings before I killed my first mountain lion. And we'd seen some smaller cats, and we'd been on some chases that didn't amount to much, and one thing or another, but I thought that was going to be a slam dunk easy hunt, and that was one of the hardest hunts I've been on, physically and mentally both.
Now, what about the black bear? Because we only can hunt them in the fall. So how did that come out?
So that's kind of a good story. That was my last animal to complete my big 8, and I used to work at a company called Dart International, which is a company that makes simulated archery target systems for archery shops, basically video screens that you shoot at, and it highlights where your arrow hit and your score and all that stuff. I used to install those back in my early 20s, and I worked for a gentleman named Fred Eichler. And a lot of folks know who Fred Eichler is in the hunting industry now. He has a guide service. Of course, he's got his own television show. He's got a couple shows. And so I called my buddy Fred up and said, Fred, I need a black bear to complete my Colorado Big 8. And he lives down in southern Colorado, where there are tons of black bears. And so I was fortunate enough to go down there and spend a day. He drove me around and basically pretty much gave me free run of a certain area and said, yep, you can hunt any of this down here. And so I was able to go down there, and where I ended up killing my black bear, I sat in a blind for days, and of course, sitting on watering hole in blind in a little wooden box, basically. I'd see elk come in, I'd see deer come in, no bears were coming in. And I got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore, sitting in that blind. So Fred had actually killed an elk 3 or 4 days prior. And I said, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to sit on that elk's gut pile. And that's where I ended up killing my black bear. It was off of an elk that he'd shot a few days earlier. I had 5 or 6 bears come in that morning. Some were sows with cubs, which you can't shoot. But I ended up connecting, and that's what completed my big 8 for me.
Now, how many years did it take you to do your big 8?
Start to finish, let's see, my first was in 93, and I think 2007 is when I killed my black bear. So it took was that 14 seasons.
Wow.
And again, it wasn't with the goal when I started. I didn't even know, that there was a Big 8 thing. So when it started, it wasn't like I was starting out to do that. It just kind of happened. And I have my business partner for the archery company. All he needs is a whitetail now, and he'll have his Big 8. And it's kind of crazy to think that, a whitetail of all the other tags, all you need is a whitetail and you'll have your Big 8. Actually, he'll have his Big 9 because he killed a Shiras moose. But they don't count the Big 8 until you get your whitetail. So he'll have his Big 8 and his Big 9 out of the 10.
Oh, my goodness. Now, is that all through Colorado Bowhunters Association?
Yeah, yes, it is. This particular one is through the Colorado Bowhunters Association. There's different, the Super Slam Club, they have different things, obviously, like the Super Slam, the North American 29 big game animals or whatever. They have the things called like the Super 10, which is the poor man's slam. They have different things like that. But this particular achievement is just kind of through the Colorado Bowhunters Association. I think Arizona has something similar. There's a few states that have and recognize, bow hunting achievements like that.
That's really interesting. And folks, the reason I'm spending some time on that in part 2 is because we all have goals, and I know at my age now, I've been fortunate to hunt a lot of places in North America, and I've collected a few representative heads here and there, but mostly for me it's the journey, because I've been in some hellacious situations. And I can laugh now, but I wasn't laughing then. I've been 9 feet from a charging grizzly bear and walked away unscathed. So, yeah, that was Parker time. Yes, I did go back to the camp, and yes, I did take a full shower, and yes, I did wash my clothes.
That's good. That's funny.
Yeah, true story. A kid named Jimmy Bruno out of Cody, Wyoming. He was my guide. We were up on the Thoroughfare River, and man, we were in this really nice canyon. It was a box canyon, and so he says, we're going to sit here. It's just pitch black. It was 4:00 in the morning, and he says, I'm going to start just bugling, and then we should pinpoint a couple of herds of elk in here. And I said, okay, fine, blah, blah, blah. So we sit there, and he'll call, and then he'll just say, we won't do anything. He just calls, and then 15, 20 minutes later calls again, and then the sun starts to come up, and then all of a sudden you hear the elk bugles bouncing off the walls. He said, so he figures it out, said, okay, we can get on this bull down here. So we drop in, and all he does is cow call now because he's dropping in on him. And you get closer and closer, and he says, not too far. He says, get ready, and all this. He's all primed, and then up to our right, above us, all of a sudden, here's a crash. He just looks at me and goes, get ready, sign language, to get ready to go. So I drop to my knees, and about 50 yards away, out walks this grizzly bear. He goes, his just eyes lights up, and he's got his 44 Magnum on it, and he just motions to me, just said, and with his mouth, don't move. He didn't speak. He just said, don't move. So and he's staying right behind me, and as we go, he's pivoting me, so I'm between him and the bear is just kind of looping, and the bear hits the trail that we came in on. There was an elk trail, and he hits that, and he senses us. So he pops up. He's full, standing up. He's probably 400-pound bear. Might be less, might be more. We'll call him 4. So he starts popping his jaws, and then he goes. And so Jimmy, right then, he popped his jaws. Jimmy just goes bam in the air. So that's shot number 1. 2, as soon as he shoots, he just drops down, and I'll shut my eyes right now, and I can see just the ripples of the muscles and he's coming down the trail, and the claws digging in, and the dirt just not flying back. It's all in slow motion, folks. And then he shoots beside him, and then bear keeps coming, and then the last shot, I'm right behind Jimmy Bruno in a lodgepole pine, and he's got his hand out, so that's 3 feet. Boom! Right over his head. He did not shoot him because he can't, because we're in a bear one area, and just right over his head, and we could later, and I wish that film crew, this would have been classic. But anyway, so he digs in all 4 paws, skids, and goes off the other way.
Yeah, that's too close for comfort.
Yeah, and it's just, I share that, folks, because that's the journey. That's why I hunt, is for stories like that and be able to share it with you guys. And I went back to Cody and got Jimmy Bruno a bronze of a grizzly bear, and I put to shoot him high from stand behind. But I'll never forget that. I mean, that was a long time ago. I was 40 years old. That was 30 years ago that happened. But you think about that, and the stories that you've talked about going to Australia, and that's the hunting tradition. So I'm going to segue right in there. Talk to me about the hunting tradition in your family and how you're sharing it with your wife and others.
So that's archery is a way of life in our household, and we basically, everything revolves around archery to some degree, whether it's going out, and we enjoy the 3D and archery tournament competitions. That's something that I was able to, I was a passion of mine, and so when I had kids, they've grown up since the ages of 5 and 6 with bows in their hand, tagging along with me to these archery tournaments. And it's been a good way just to spend quality time together. And so, of course, as we grow and shoots have gone by and all that, we that's just a natural transition for hunting, because a lot of the folks at these 3D shoots are hunters themselves and are talking hunting stories and what tags they have coming up and what tags they ended up having to eat and all that kind of stuff. And so, my wife, when she married me, and I was a hunter, and her dad was a hunter as well, so it wasn't foreign to her, but we started hunting together. And she's been fortunate enough to harvest, a deer with a rifle when we first met, when we were engaged, and then she's been bow hunting ever since. And something that's pretty cool is she's been fortunate enough to harvest her first bow kill in Colorado was a Boone and Crockett sized bighorn sheep.
Oh my goodness!
In the same unit I killed my bighorn sheep in, and it was kind of a funny story because she wasn't sure that she wanted to hunt sheep, and it's been one of those things where if there's an inkling that you might want to hunt sheep, you need to be put in for the licenses, just period. Otherwise, you may never draw. So that's kind of what I was doing, and our kids were younger. That was in 2009 when she killed that sheep, and she wasn't 100% committed when she got that tag and she drew that tag. She kind of felt bad. She's like, well, I might be taking this opportunity away from somebody else who's been maybe putting in longer, or that wants to hunt, has more of a desire to hunt these sheep. And so we got over that hurdle, and I've hunted that unit before and was successful, and was able to go down there scouting a little bit. And we went, and this particular hunt is a December hunt, so it's right kind of during or after their rut. They're kind of finishing up their rut, and we have the whole month of December to hunt these sheep. And what was that was, I don't know if that's good or bad, other than the fact that we have 4 kids, and all their Christmas school activities, all their Christmas programs, all that stuff's happening that month. And which means she's not going to miss, my wife is not going to miss it, our kids' school activities and that sort of thing. That's kind of her priority. And so that kind of left what was left for finding a few days here and there to go hunt. And we'd been down hunting that unit, had a couple opportunities, and got within bow range and then bumped them, and the sheep are gone. And I was able to talk her into going back. After Christmas, she ended up killing her sheep on the 27th after an all-day stalk. We found them about 9 o'clock in the morning, and she killed him right at last light. So that would have been probably right around 4:30, if I remember correctly, in December. But incredible. She didn't know what she had. Of course, that was the highlight of our marriage, aside from the birth of our children.
Oh, my goodness.
And so, we're there taking pictures, and of course I scanned it, and we ended up doing a life size. But at the time, she didn't know what kind of accomplishment that was. And through some of the terrain that she'd done, she was kind of cussing me under her breath, some of the areas that we were going to stock this sheep. And in hindsight, after she's done that and seen what an accomplishment that was, and given her kind of that self-confidence, we've had other friends and women specifically come out and tell her kind of what an inspiration she's been, and that she's, maybe given them new goals and things to go and hunt with their husbands. So that's been really kind of good for her. And she's not one. She would never. Score doesn't matter to her. That's not what it's about. And of course, she doesn't ever look for any accolades or anything like that. So it's just been fun to watch the other people that have come out and approached her and told her how important that was to them. So that's been kind of fun. And then this last season, I've had my kids out turkey hunting and bow hunting for turkeys, and we haven't been successful. And finally this year, my 17-year-old daughter thought she was ready to go ahead and hunt big game with a bow. So she had plenty of preference points. We drew a tag, a public land Eastern Colorado tag, and went and we did scouting. We went out and hung tree stands, several weeks before, and it was an opportunity for me to teach her about the hunting aspect of hunting whitetail deer and how keen they are, and trying to teach her about hunting with the wind, and teach her how to find a good pinch point, a good tree stand location, all these different things. And her second day of hunting, she was fortunate enough to harvest a really nice, mature whitetail buck as her first bow kill. And so that was just, I'm not sure who was more excited, me or her. And I know I was more nervous when that deer was coming in than she was. She handled it like a champ. So,
oh my goodness,
that was a lot of fun. And of course, it was a substantial buck, very, very nice first bow kill. And I told her for her homework, since I pulled her out of school to go do this, that she had to write an article for our our state organization, the Colorado Bowhunter Association, and as part of her homework for missing, I think we missed a total of 4 days of school.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that's her homework assignment. So we'll see if she gets it completed.
Wow. Well, that's great. And listeners, it can be a family affair, and have hunted sheep. That's a tough hunt. Even if it looks simple, there's some areas that you can get on cheap. You don't have to climb 13,000-foot mountains, but it's a tough hunt. And I spent August. There were 10 tags, 4 people tagged out, and 6 of us didn't. I did not, and I hunted 22 days.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough when you spend that much time and you see the game, and but I'm sure you've got a lot of memories and things. You'll never forget that hunt, I'm sure.
No, because the backstory is in February I get a brand new hip, and then in June I tore my rotator cuff of my bicep using free weights, but I still hunted.
Oh.
And and I climbed my first 14er, of one of many during that hunt, but I climbed the first one. And again, I get back to the joy of the hunt, and I can't, express that. Some of the best hunts going on right now in Wisconsin and all the states that have a traditional gun season, Wisconsin 9-day gun season, but people have generations, gramps to just kids at 6, 7, 8 years old. They're all in deer camp. They're all hearing the stories. They're going to the concussion stand or the hideout stand or the breakout stand, blah, blah, blah. Everybody names their stands, and they've been doing it for years. This year was my 50th anniversary, and I'm digressing a lot, but I'm so thankful, and it's appropriate. Thanksgiving is just a couple of days. I'm thankful that I've been able to do that. One, have a supportive wife, have a supportive Scotland and Laura, my kids, and Kathy, my wife. They supported me in my, my passion, and I'm very thankful for that. I'm sure, Shawn, you could say the same thing.
Absolutely. No question about that. So, yeah.
So let's go. I'm going to go click back here and let's talk about what we need to do as hunters to make sure we're the best people, or give, I guess, say it this way, we're the best ambassadors that we can be.
Right. Well, so that's a good question, and that's a kind of a controversial question too, because what's right for me might not be right for somebody else, ethically speaking. But one of the things that it all comes down to preparedness and knowing your capabilities. And even though we always know that, we're human. And as I've grown, I've become a more patient hunter, and I don't take shots like I used to. I've had too many things in the past where maybe I haven't recovered an animal, and why didn't I recover that animal? And usually it can be brought back to something that was a little bit that I wouldn't normally do. And but a lot of it starts with your equipment, and we're very shooting the 3D archery. That's a very controlled setting for hunting. It helps, but it really teaches you a lot about your equipment, how to fix your equipment, how to properly set up and level your sight. There's a lot of professionals that don't really know how to level a sight properly with first, second, and third axis leveling. And so I think the most important thing is just to be prepared, know your capabilities, and try not to do something that you normally wouldn't do. Or if you tell yourself, I'm only going to take a shot out to X yardage, try to stick with that. And that's hard to do. I mean, there's been times where I've told myself, out west, we've got longer shot opportunities, I'll say it that way. And I shoot professionally, for 3D archery, in good, calm situations. The equipment nowadays is extremely accurate. But my rule of thumb is if I can't get within 60 yards, and then even at that point, if the body language or certain variables aren't, and shot angle, all those things come into play, isn't right, then I won't take that shot either. But there's been times where I've pushed that, and we're all human, and at the end of the day, we've got to answer to ourselves in those things. But being prepared, I think, is probably the most important thing. And what that means is, some people, you see these guys that get their bow out of the box the week or two before season and shoot a few arrows, and it's in a controlled environment, and they're keeping them in the vitals or whatever at certain distances, and they think they're good to go. And they may be to a certain degree, but we all know hunting doesn't. That animal doesn't come in exactly where you think it is, or it doesn't always play out exactly how you hope. There might be a tree branch or a limb that you've got to contort your body to be able to shoot over, and so you've got to be prepared for different scenarios that may play out, and then also be smart enough to realize, I probably shouldn't be taking this shot or whatever. So
let's touch on one thing, and then we're going to give you time to give some shout outs, and we'll move on, get into the grocery store and get ready for Thanksgiving. Why do we challenge each other, or on Facebook? I see it all the time, social media, and sometimes at meetings at DOW or Colorado Parks and Wildlife or shows where people say, "Oh, you're using a muzzleloader versus a rifle," or "I'm using a crossbow just because I can't pull back a compound anymore," and other people use a stick and a string, and other people use compounds. Why is that? Help me understand, help me share briefly, what that's all about and why we shouldn't do that.
Well, that's pretty, that's a good question. So you see that even within archery, guys shooting a compound versus guys shooting traditional gear. I've been fortunate enough to go and help with an organization called the PCBA, which is Physically Challenged Bow Hunters Association or something like that. And that really opened my eyes kind of to that, because we went to this was in Gillette, Wyoming. It was an antelope hunt, and there were varying degrees of disabled folks at this hunt that you have to apply, and I think there was slots for 15 or 20 different archers, and you had guys that would walk with a cane that were basically able-bodied, all the way to guys that were using straws to steer their wheelchair. So you had the gamut of different degrees of what disabled would be. And you had the guys that were really disabled that basically would have a guy lining up their crossbow for them, and they'd blow on a straw somehow, and it would fire the shot, and those guys were actually successful in harvesting antelope out of blinds and things. And you had other guys that were using compounds. And at the end of the day, the joy that was on the guy that shot his with a compound versus the guy that shot his with a crossbow that somebody else had basically lined up for him was the same. The experiences, the animal coming into the watering hole or the fence crossing or whatever it was, the things that they saw, the hunt stories that they told in the blinds together, it was all the same. And basically, they all got to see, well, I shouldn't say all, because there was a blind person there that was hunting, again, with an aid. But all of those people got to see their arrow fly. And it didn't matter how the arrow got there, what kind of weapon. It was the hunt that was really important and the relationships that were developed. So, I don't know why that is such an important thing. What's right for me isn't necessarily right for you. Another friend of mine who's a diehard avid bow hunter, he has a television show and everything. Well, he messed up his bicep, and so the one year, and he's a bow hunting only guy, the one year he ended up having to hunt with a crossbow, and he was able to get a doctor's note, so to speak, so that he could do that during archery season and all that. But is that wrong? I don't think so. He's out in the field doing what he loves to do, pursuing game. And so, I don't know, it's interesting that people downplay it or whatever. So I don't think it's right. And at the end of the day, we're all hunters, and we all need to band together and respect, as long as it's done legally and to the best of our ethics. That's kind of all that matters, really, at the end of the day.
Thanks so much for sharing that. And then let's take, 90 seconds and give some shout outs. Make sure you get your business up and tell people how to get a hold of them and then anybody else. And then we'll wrap the show, Shawn.
Sure. I appreciate that. So first of all, thank you for inviting me on, Bruce. It's been a pleasure getting to talk some hunting stories. I'd also obviously like to do the cliche, thank my wife and family and kids, and without them allowing me to be away doing these things, where would I be? So thanks for that. And, my sponsors, I've got several sponsors, Mathews Archery, Grim Reaper Broadheads, Vein Tech Vanes, gold tip arrows. So thanks for my sponsors. And Hamskea Archery Solutions is the name of our company, and we basically make and manufacture archery accessories that will help you maximize your accuracy. So everything that we do is products that are designed to improve on what's not out there and to actually help you become a more accurate, foolproof archer. We can be found on Facebook, Hamskea Archery, or we can be found on the web. We have a website, hamskeaarchery.com. And I think that's about it.
Well, Shawn Greathouse, it's been a pure pleasure, and thanks for allowing us to do a two-part show. So, folks all over North America, big shout out to Shawn Greathouse, and you can just tell by hearing him, he's passionate about hunting, but he's passionate about the journey also. So, Shawn, again, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
Hey, don't forget to tune into the next episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. And we're going to meet with Tim Conley. Tim Conley's from Knightstown, Indiana. And folks, Indiana is putting out some big bucks. Well, we're going to talk about one special buck that Tim's been chasing for a number of years and how he put him down.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.